Good afternoon, good evening, students. I hope you're doing good. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're back with another lecture concerning civilization or civilization for third-year students. As you can see, we are going to deal with World War One as, let's say, a general topic of, let's say, this chapter only. But before we study the war itself, we need to study the period that preceded the war. We are going to name it Europe before 1914. 1914 basically is the beginning of the war. So we are going to study everything that happened in Europe before 1914, and in order to understand, or let's say to be aware of the factors that might lead to that war. Now, before I start this lecture of Europe before 1914, please leave a like on the Facebook page of this channel in order to be notified whenever I post something new, and also subscribe on the channel if it's not already done. That would encourage me to do more and also help you out in the period of exams. Now, without any further ado, we shall start with Europe before 1914. So, in terms of information concerning this period, Europe before 1914, of course, it's vast. Right? It's very vast. Therefore, I personally decided to pick some specific titles that I'm willing to discuss with you throughout the whole video. Of course, you can find other information elsewhere, I don't know, like historical books or on the internet. But I will give you these titles first, then I will discuss them one by one. The first title is Globalization. Second is Democratization. Third is Military Revolutions. Fourth is International Organization. The fifth is A Balance of Power. This one is very important. The sixth is the beginning of the 20th century. Now, we shall start with globalization, but please be selective in case you're taking notes. For example, do not take everything, otherwise you might be confused and all. Just take the things that you need, the things that are included in your syllabus. But if you're curious, you can also take everything. But you should know that there are other informations that you might find elsewhere. This is not everything, but according to me, this is the most important things. We shall start with globalization. Globalization is related to trade and investments. Trade, you should know that trade rose in Europe, right? Along with global investments. What do we mean by global? This trade did not happen between European countries alone, but they went worldwide. They trade. They practice this trade with Asian countries, with the United States of America. So this is what we call globalization, the whole globe. And according to Professor David Stevenson, a history teacher, he said that Europe's major currencies were fixed in value according to the international gold standard. This is very important. So things started to be, let's say, to become organized. One more thing is the fact that many foreign laborers worked in France and Germany. So we have laborers from, let's say, all over the world. They come to France and Germany, more precisely in the Lorraine and Ruhr, if I pronounce the word correctly, but it's in Germany. So they worked there because it was the age of industrial revolution, technology and all. So this is about globalization. This is very important. Then we move to democratization. Right? We need to discuss things about parliament, the press, and the citizens, and also socialism. These are the 4 points that we are going to discuss. Parliament first. We can say that the parliament became a good option by 1914. Like I'm going to explain when I get to the exception in Russia and Austria-Hungary. But we move to the press. The press, or journalism. Press was free, or became free. They were not tied with, let's say, high class, people and all. So the press was free. And citizens, they formed parties. Labour Party, for example, in Europe, and many parties were created in Europe at that time as well. Now, when I said the parliament became a good option by 1914, there was an exception. It means many countries opted for, let's say, having a parliament. But there was an exception in Russia and Austro-Hungary. This exception, sorry, or these two, let's say, empires, they had prime ministers, but these prime ministers were mostly related to the monarch. What do we mean by related to the monarch rather than the parliament? The prime minister in England, for example, he answered to the parliament. But the prime minister in Russia or Austro-Hungary, for example, they answered to the monarch, not the parliament. This is the exception. When we talk about socialism, socialists of Europe at that time opposed wars in general. We do not want wars, but they said they were ready to fight if it was for a just cause, or what we call self-defense. And the irony of the thing is, in 1914, everyone claimed that they were fighting for a just cause. This is as far as democratization is concerned. We move to the third point, that is military revolutions. Military revolutions, we do not mean rebellion, for example, as a revolution, like the American Revolution. No. When we say military revolution, is more likely to be related to industrial revolution, because industrial revolution brought improvements in terms of technology. Technology was used in terms of weaponry. So let's say the armies developed, they made new weapons, they improved the weapons and all. This is very important. For example, the steel, it's the metal, steel replaced wood. For example, if you take ships before, they were built using wood. And it was vulnerable, was not that strong. But they replaced wood with steel. Do not confuse the word steel with still. It's not the same thing. Then we have steam replaced sail. Sail is the metal that governs the ship, and steam is like, it's more like to be the new engine of that time. It was also a result of the Industrial Revolution. And there was something, I mean, that was very important at that time. It's the fact that Britain launched the HMS Dreadnought. It's a ship, a battleship. It was launched in 1906 with turbine engines. It's very, very huge and very, let's say, strong as well. It was a ship to end all ships, because the navy at that time was very important as well. We have, in terms of Germany, the railway-borne mobilization helped the German unification win the war. Now this is very important. I cannot move to something else if I don't discuss with you the German unification. The German unification, you know, Germany as we know it today wasn't like this all the time. Before, it was not an empire, it was national states. We have many kingdoms in what we call today Germany. Then one day, an important man for the German culture and all, this man called Otto von Bismarck decided to unite Germany and to make it unite it under one empire, the German Empire. But in order to do so, he had to go through many stages, right? We start with the Franco-Prussian War. This is very important. The Franco-Prussian War, as you can see, it was a war between France and Prussia. What is Prussia? Prussia is one of the dominant kingdoms in Germany at that time. Alright? So Bismarck was a Prussian man. So he, let's say, trained the army of Prussia, he organized them, he developed the army, and they became very strong. They even defeated Austria at that time in order to gain lands and territories. Then this is the first, that we can say that it's the first step to do what we call the unification of Germany. So there was this war between France and Prussia. Why? Well, Prussia became, let's say, very, let's say, strong, and France was dominant at that time as well. When France noticed that there is a rising kingdom, because it was an empire back then, yet, so when they saw that there is something strong is rising, for example, they felt threatened, right? We are going to, let's say, have a general look of this war, then we are going to go into details. Like I said, you have to be selective. Some German allies of Prussia joined Prussia in order to help win the war against France. This war was provoked by Otto von Bismarck. He was the Prussian chancellor. His purpose was to unite, right, Germany, or the Germans, to one empire. The war started on 19th July 1870 and ended in 10th May 1871 was the year. Prussia, by the way, Prussia won the war. Okay? This is a general outlook, or this is a general background of the unification of Germany between whom and why. Now we are going to go into details concerning the unification of Germany. So in 1866, which means before the unification of Germany, these are details now. I'm not talking about the unification of Germany yet. I have given a general view. Now we are going to get into details. So in 1866, there was the 7 Weeks' War, which proved the strength of the Prussian army. Then France felt threatened, and this threat increased when the Prince Leopold, he was a prince, he belonged to the Prussian royal family. He was given the throne of Spain. I think after Queen Isabella II, I guess, was deposed, he was given the throne of Spain, and he was against it, but he was convinced by Otto von Bismarck to accept the offer. France felt even more threatened due to a possible combination of Spain and Prussia that would make France very weak in front of the Germans in general. So, the French ambassador interfered and prevented such a decision, but he wanted to control King William I. I mean, Wilhelm, I think his name is. We can call it William I in English. He was the king of Prussia back then. He, let's say, William was unwillingly to bow to the French ambassador. He didn't want to submit to France because that was a kind of humiliation, right? Then what did he do? He refused what the ambassador said. So the offer was rejected, but the king of Prussia of that time wrote a telegraph to describe the, let's say, the interview. But Bismarck, he edited that telegraph, right? And it resulted in provocation, which led to the declaration of war. Because France, when, let's say, the French received the telegraph, but it wasn't the original telegraph. It was edited by Bismarck in order to create a conflict between, let's say, Prussia and France. So it resulted in a declaration of war by France declared war on Prussia, and Bismarck took it as an opportunity to bring the southern German states to the unity. So here Bismarck gained more men, more capacity to defeat the French. Anyways, when he brought all these newcomers from the southern German states, he built a strong empire. He had his empire now. Prussia, of course, won the war. It resulted in establishing the German Empire. It resulted also in the French Third Republic, right? And Germany annexed all, took territories of what we call Alsace and Lorraine. Then we move to the international organization. What do we mean by international organization? They were internationally organized. Who were organized? The nations of Europe at that time, of course. You see, whenever tensions rose, the powers had the ability to resolve the problem or to resolve these tensions through ambassadors. Each nation, for example, sent its ambassador, then they solved the problem that they had. This is about international organization. I had to mention it because it was very important. Then we have the balance of power. This is one of the most important things that we can talk about in the lecture of today. You should know that the balance of power was the center of peace, which means peace depended on this balance of power. You see, after the unification of the German Empire, it had a strong army and also made alliances with Austria-Hungary, then with Italy. Italy was not very formal, but still, it was still an alliance. But Italy never waged a war against the allies that we know, France, England, and USA later on. So here, France lost the war against Prussia. The Prussians made their own empire. It's the German Empire. Now the German Empire is stronger than ever, and they started to make alliances with Austria-Hungary in order to increase their power. How about France? France was left isolated and angry, right? And Russia concluded an alliance with France as well. They were also in rivalry with Britain. Russia and France. They were in rivalry with Britain in Central Asia and Africa, because Great Britain had the largest empire ever, so they were approximately everywhere. So we can say that both Russia and France were in rivalry with Britain, and Germany challenged Britain as well through battleship building. With that being said, we move to the last point of the lecture of today, that is the beginning of the 20th century. So Russia, during the beginning of the 20th century in general, Russia became weak after its defeat by Japan, because there was a war between Russia and Japan, and Germany failed to form a German Franco-Russian bloc excluding Britain, because Germany opted to leave Britain out and to gather with France and Russia later on. Then the British or Britain compromised with the French, forming what we call the Entente Cordiale. This is very important. It was in 1904. Now the French and the British became allies, and the alliance is called Entente Cordiale. And then it became the Triple Entente in 1907 when the Russians were added. Now we have Russians, the French, the British as allies, right? And we call them the Triple Entente. When it's only France and Britain, we call it the Entente Cordiale. When it's Russia, France, and Britain, it's a Triple Entente. Then Austria-Hungary was, we should know that Austria-Hungary was a multinational empire. I mean, they had many cultures inside and all, and when you have that kind of diversity, if you do not control it well, you will have disputes. So we can say that disputes were found, and tensions grew with Serbia as well. And the thing is, Russia encouraged separatism among Austria-Hungary South Slavs. Here's the thing: the Southern Slavs in general wanted to break off from the Austro-Hungary Empire. So Russia, we can say that, helped the Serbs, and the Serbs helped those Slavs in order to break off from that empire. That is what we call the Black Hand. There was Serbian nationalists. It's very important. So Austria-Hungary here was suffering from these disputes, and Russia from a side trying to help Serbia, Serbia trying to help those southern Slavs to break off from the Austria-Hungary Empire and all, in order to make another unification of the whole Slavs and all. So it was kind of messy. Then greater tensions grew between the two blocks. When I say two blocks, it's the alliances. From 1912, the Anglo-German naval race lost its importance, which means there was a kind of race between Britain and Germany in terms of battleships, who would build more or stronger ships than the other. So this phenomenon lost its importance because there was an arms race that started between Austro-German and Franco-Russian alliances. This is very important. Of course, you need to know that these signs are easy to detect that something bad is about to happen, but it wasn't that evident at that time. Everyone was trying to impose its own authority to prove that I'm stronger than you and all. And all these, of course, led to what we call the outbreak of the First World War. Now, this is the end of the lecture of today. I hope I made it easier for you to understand a little bit of the, let's say, the pre-war, or the period of Europe before 1914. I think this is enough as luggage to understand the causes, because the causes are easier than this. They are, let's say, included in this as well. You can take some of the information here and add them to the causes, of course, if you want. No problem. Now, if you have any kind of question, feel free to message me on the Facebook page, or you can leave your questions in the comments below. Otherwise, I tell you, see you in the next video. Peace.